This allegation of groomer and pedophile, it is alleging that a person is criminal somehow and engaged in criminal acts merely because of their identity.
I don't know who needs to hear this, but pedophilia is a criminal activity, and grooming or manipulating children into having conversations about sexual preference is predatory. But instead of defending innocent children, Representative Katie Porter wants to come to the defense of predators, condemning Twitter for not doing enough to censor the term groomer.
This is not just about what happens online. What happens online translates into real harms in people's lives.
You know what did translate into real harm in people's lives? This predator from CNN, soliciting minors for sex. Former CNN producer John Griffin pleads guilty to child sex charge. Daily Caller reports 45-year-old Griffin coerced a 9-year-old girl into engaging in sexual acts with him. He convinced a woman he met online to bring her daughter to his ski home in Vermont for that purpose in 2020. But I'm sure, according to Katie Porter, calling Griffin a pedo would be discriminatory. When Elon Musk announced efforts to remove child exploitation on Twitter, he was attacked and labeled far-right. Here is what Matt Taibbi says the latest Twitter files dump reveals. Instead of chasing child sex predators or terrorists, the FBI has agents, lots of them, analyzing and mass flagging social media posts, not as part of any criminal investigation, but as a permanent end-in-itself surveillance operation. Twitter File 6 is titled Twitter, the FBI Subsidiary. The thread breaks down just how constant and pervasive the relationship between the FBI and Twitter was. The department even had a social media-focused task force. And it was so petty, Reclaim the Net points out it even flagged jokes and satire to be censored. According to Taibbi, there were more than 150 emails between the FBI and former head of Twitter Trust and Safety, Chief Yoel Roth. A surprisingly high number of these emails were FBI requests for Twitter to take action on election misinformation, even involving joke tweets from low-follower accounts. Liz Wheeler tweets, understated bombshell in Twitter files today. FBI used fake Russia collusion hoax as justification to police speech on Twitter in the name of foreign interference, even though Russia collusion was an FBI Hillary concocted load of crap. The FBI tries to CYA, releasing this statement, private sector entities independently make decisions about what, if any, action they take on their platforms and for their customers after the FBI has notified them. Notified or pressured. Epoch Times reports that pressure might even have been deadly. Former White House COVID advisor Dr. Scott Atlas says the censorship was criminal as it allowed lies to be imposed on the public during a pandemic that wrought untold damage worldwide. When correct science policy is blocked, people die, and people died from the censorship. The feeling of being censored suddenly hit close to home to journalist hacks who had cheered it on before when Musk suspended some of them. Despite Musk explicitly saying it was for breaking the doxing rule just after his son was put in danger, misleading headlines said Musk was just banning people critical of him. And here's NBC. Twitter suspends journalists who have been covering Elon Musk and the company. This after NBC actually suspended its own reporter, Ben Collins. According to Post Millennial, the network benched Collins because his criticisms of Musk were not editorially appropriate. Crybaby Taylor Lorenz joined the chorus of those saying Musk was just banning those critical of him. Musk reiterates it was for the doxing, which is ironic seeing as Lorenz has been notorious for doxing her opponents. Twitchy reports Lorenz has now scrubbed her Twitter account after getting caught in so many lies and doxes. Lorenz doxing victim libs of TikTok tweets, what is Tay-Tay hiding? CNN is reportedly reevaluating its relationship with Twitter after the suspension of journalists. Funny, I don't remember CNN even caring when the entire New York Post was suspended after a factually correct report. Many got ratioed as they acted outraged about these suspensions after tweets celebrating others getting kicked off and saying it's a private company, it can do what it wants. Oh, but now that the shoe is on the other foot, you're singing a different tune. None of them stood up for investigative journalists like Emerald Robinson, Tracy Beans, or Project Veritas when they were removed. None of them acknowledged the national security implications of removing a sitting president. After a Democratic poll, those suspended have already been allowed back on. But now they've been exposed for their blatant hypocrisy and utter lack of principles. The media elite have either ignored or tried to discredit any Twitter files exposure. Earlier this week, Washington Post labeled the journalists covering the dumps as conservatives, a qualifier they were forced to scrub, but of course didn't even issue a correction. So what's next? Elon confirms Prosecute Fauci was a preview of information he'll be releasing, according to the American Tribune. And former Congressman Devin Nunes says the social media coordination between the DOJ and FBI is not limited to Twitter, according to Epoch Times. But what, if anything, will be done about these revelations? Law professor Philip Hamburger took up that question in the Wall Street Journal. He says cooperation between government officials and private parties to suppress speech could be considered a criminal conspiracy to violate civil rights, citing Section 241 of Title 18 of the U.S. Code. He says because the First Amendment doesn't bar private parties from independently suppressing speech, Section 241 would apply to text censorship only if government officers acting as part of a conspiracy have violated the Constitution. Government remains bound by the First Amendment even when it works through private cutouts. In light of prosecution concerns, we see the Dorsey deflect. Former Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey is blaming a hostile takeover in 2020 for giving up his fight against censorship, according to Information Liberation. Surely the propaganda puppets will gleefully play cover. So-called journalists have long disregarded the tenet to hold those in power accountable, instead acting like a PR firm for the current administration. The latest, instead of any accountability for the economic destruction we're all experiencing, the media is blaming high prices on climate change, according to Based Underground. Bringing you what's ignored, sensationalized, misleading, or just plain false. That's your media malfeasance for the week. To support my work, subscribe to my community, ChristyLeeTV.locals.com. For KLIM.news, I'm Christy Lee.